Hey everyone, welcome back to the One Tree Hill Rewatch here on the Filmaholic channel, and today I'm talking about 3 episodes in Season 7 of One Tree Hill. Now, the first episode is 704, Believe Me, I'm Lying, which originally aired October 5th, 2009, was directed by Greg Prange and written by John A. Norris. So this episode, when I think about this episode, the main thing I think about is that it was the Clothes Over Bro fashion show in Tree Hill. And this is the episode where they have the Zeros Not a Size campaign start with Millicent, who begins her modeling career in this episode, which that whole storyline is a mess. Okay, I'm not a fan of that, and like I've mentioned before, I'm not really a fan of the whole Millicent storyline that they play for the rest of the series. At least for the most part, and based off my memory. I'm hoping when I get to season 8 or 9 that changes, and I like some stuff with her more. But her going into modeling in this episode, I'm fine with. Like, that could have been a really good storyline. Like, I actually like the whole thing that she does, and the Alex ends up giving the pills to that one model because she's a bitch and she passes out, and then Millicent ends up filling in. All of that really worked. It's how they continue the storyline after that, and how I know they continue the storyline after that really bums me out and makes me uninterested. And I'm also really not sure how Millicent in this season has a position higher than Victoria. Victoria comes back in this episode, which at this point, her and Brooke had came to some sort of redemption type thing at the end. Not redemption, but like, I don't want to say like it's not they've patched up their relationship. That's a good thing. There's no like forgiving everything that's happened and forgetting, but it's patched up and they have a good relationship now moving forward. But Victoria definitely had the more experience, and I'm not sure why she didn't stay on in her position, but for some reason now Millicent is above her. Yeah, weird. But she comes back in this episode, and she has some good interaction with Julian. I like that, but she does warn Brooke in this episode, hey, don't trust Julian and Alex together. It's like, Alex is not to be messed with. Like, don't let him get too close. And there's also a really funny scene with her and Chase in this episode and that moment comes back later in the season 2 in a couple episodes where Chase talks to her twice and she doesn't remember him either time. She's like, I think your name is Fetch or something. It's really funny. Renee, she turns to the magazines in this episode because they decided not to pay her, or they're not paying her yet. So she turns to the magazines and National Enquirer type stuff, and they start putting that out there. Jamie sees it and will ask, what is a love child, and all this. Chuck, which another awful character that I don't know why they kept bringing back, doesn't work for me, is teasing Jamie at school about the situation. Like Chase, Chuck has a good storyline in season 9, but like look at all we have to go through before we get to that good storyline. And really, Chuck, being a kid, his storyline should only revolve around Jamie and being Jamie's friend, but he's not really Jamie's friend that much. He bullies him and makes fun of him most of the time, which, when we get to season 9, it's kind of explained why he is the way he is, but it's just not necessary. Like, I don't know why the kid kept coming back. But that happens in the episode. Haley buys all the magazines and whatnot. And Quinn, she has a conversation with David in this episode. She wants a divorce, all of this, and he's not really willing to let go. He keeps wanting to fight for her, which is understandable, but really just not very interesting. The whole storyline with them two together, and it ultimately ends, in Clay and Quinn. We've been teased of them possibly being a thing in like a couple episodes. Obviously, Clay is attracted to her, and she kind of plays around with the idea of him, I think, but not too seriously at this point because she is still married to David. But the episode ends with, Clay ends up hitting David in defense of Quinn, and then when Clay leaves at the end of the episode, Quinn goes with him, and David sees, and Clay's like, are you sure you want to do this? Because he's never going to forgive you. Which really just adds to Clay's character in building him, because he knows, because he's been married, and he's been in that situation, but not in that situation, obviously, but he understands marriages, and it's really just, I don't know. Like, I really like Clay's character. I love his backstory of him and Sarah, and we're really gonna go into that in the next few episodes, which is the next video after this. I'll be talking about in just episode 707, which is one of my favorite episodes of the season. But yeah, Quinn goes home with Clay. Chase, he has the new cocktail, by the way, in this episode, which is really funny. Like I said, the character's fine in like moments like this where he's just like there as filler kind of, but when he gets his own storyline, it just no one really. I don't really care. But anyways, he has the new cocktail. It's funny. Different characters and in a few episodes react to the cocktail, and we also find out that he is bar manager now, not just bartender. Which the whole Trick stuff kind of confuses me sometimes of like who runs Trick, and what about that? Because I think at some point, was in season 9. I know I'm jumping way ahead here. I think in the series finale, Karen sells the bar to Chase. I want to say, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm wanting to say that Chase buys the bar in Trick in the series finale, but like not the club, which makes no sense to me. Like, unless you're talking about he owns the like Trick, but Red Bedroom is separate. But no, I think he just buys the bar. I don't know. It's weird. I mean, I guess like Karen would own the building and would make money from concerts and stuff, but yet he would get the money from the drinks. I don't know. And we'll talk about it more when we get there. But Grubbs is introduced in this episode as well, the singer of Wakey Wakey, a band that I really like. Seen him in concert, met him. He's really awesome. And I like his character. Now, his character is kind of added in too. He's like the new bartender, and he is really there for some like interesting, like fun moments, like he can guess your drink and all this. But as the season goes on, and we hear his music and stuff, and he becomes an artist, one of those artists on the show that we like their music. He's going to become part of Red Bedroom Records, as far as like signing with them. But he's an interesting character. Learning about his backstory as we go along, and then his interaction with Miranda and their love story. These are characters that, like, why didn't they come back after season 7? Would have much rather had them in season 8 than some of the stuff we get in season 8. And at least brought them back for season 9. Like, it would have been so cool to at least see them in the series finale. Like, Grubbs come back and be playing in the finale at Trick. Or I had a friend at one point, he said, even if we didn't see them come back to Tree Hill, like maybe a shot in the finale just rent, like, the coda when we're seeing all this different stuff. What if they had brought characters back? And I know this isn't finale talk, but this is on my mind, so I want to go ahead and talk about it. If they had just jumped to certain characters that were not even in Tree Hill anymore, but we still cared about at different parts, and kind of showed them in the series finale, like showed Grubbs and Miranda saying like London or New York or something together in the series finale, while like a song is playing, and maybe Jake visit him and Jenny somewhere and see how they are, or Lucas and Peyton, or the Lucas and Peyton thing. That's a whole different topic that we'll definitely talk more about in season 9, because they should have been brought back for all of episode 12 at least, and they weren't in that episode, but we'll talk about that. Mouth, he refuses to report on the rumor in this episode, so he does not get fired from the news station, but he does lose his own anchor position and ends up in the next episode having to go back to being in archives, something that he was doing in like the season 5, and I'll talk about that in just a second when we get to that episode. But yeah, he refuses to talk about the rumor of Nathan's affair. And then we also obviously have the stuff with Millicent, the zero not a size, and her begin her modeling thing. And then the episode ends with Renee confronting Haley outside and saying this stupid shit that's obviously not true, like that her and Nathan pretty much had a conversation while they were having sex, and Haley ends up slapping her, and that's how the episode ends. Which then takes us into the next episode, which is 705, Your Cheatin' Heart, which originally aired October 12th, 2009, and was directed by Peter B. Kozlowski and written by Mike Hero and David Starts. we're at Haley's house, and they're getting ready for the morning, and then the cops show up and arrest Haley because Haley's, she slapped Renee, and Renee is pressing charges now. So Haley's arrested. Nathan, really pissed about it. Jamie gets mad, trashes his police car. Don't blame the kid. So all that happens in this episode. She's arrested. Nathan's trying to get a hold of Clay, but he's with Quinn. They turn their phones off. They're having a moment. She stayed over at his place. They didn't have sex, but they did stay the night together, and that whole relationship pretty much begins at that point. From the point in Trick when he hits David. I think that's the start of the relationship of moving forward. Like, it was teased a little bit before that, but from that moment and her making a decision to go with him in the car to his place, that started their relationship, which takes us through the rest of the series. Renee visits Haley in jail too, and says that she's dropping the charges, but gives her this phone number, and she's like, look through Nathan's phone records, which Haley does, and gets very paranoid. You can't blame her in the situation with everything's happening, but she ends up trusting Nathan by the end of the episode. But she's worried at first, and she's going through, and she finds the phone number in Nathan's records. But like he says, a lot of people get my number, a lot of people call me, and I have to tell them what's up. Like, don't call me anymore. I'm married. Leave me alone. So that happens. Like I said, with the mouth situation, his boss is bothering him in archives, making fun of him, saying all you had to do was report on the news and type stuff. I don't understand it, because I don't know if I guess we're supposed to believe there's only one news station in Tree Hill, which most places that I've lived at have at least like 2 news stations. So I don't know. Like, if I was Mouth, definitely would have quit and went to a different station. But really, you're gonna. I understand, and I fully support Mouth of what he's been a good friend. But you're gonna have to report on it probably wherever you go. But I definitely wouldn't have went back to archives after being an on-air reporter. Taking that huge step back, that's ridiculous. Would have definitely quit. Would not have taken that embarrassment. But he ends up doing that. Alex and Julian continue to work on their script in this episode. Alex is, of course, being flirtatious to Julian, ends up getting naked for him, and then he ends up having to leave, and they have to set some boundaries. But of course, she continues what she's going to do, because she ends up liking Julian and falls in love with him and all this different stuff. So he finds out too, I think that was the last episode, he found out that script was actually hers, so they are working together on her script of getting in shape so it can actually be a film. Dan finds out about Renee in this episode. He gets the magazines, and he calls Nathan, and Rachel's like, don't do it, he's never going to accept you and all this. Dan calls Nathan to try to talk to him, like, see if he can do anything to help Nathan, and Nathan shuts him out, which leads us to the end of the episode here in a second. Nathan is also mad at Clay too, and they end up having a press conference in this episode at the end of the episode about Renee and coming together as a family and discussing it out. And it's a beautifully shot, because it's out on Water Street in Wilmington, out of the courthouse, at the water, sunset, great shot. But at this point too, like, Nathan's really upset at Clay for the whole like being with Quinn thing, and he's like, stay away from her, which to me, I get annoyed with Quinn, not only just because of her character, but like I get annoyed with some of the stuff she acts like, oh, there's so much drama going on over there. Like, that's annoying in its own thing, of her saying that about the Nathan and Haley thing. But what also annoys me is how they're trying to tell Clay to stay away from Quinn. That relationship's over. She wants a divorce from David. That's why she's here. Like, let it go. Let it go. But yeah, you have the Millie stuff too, right? So the episode starts where she was out partying all night, and she didn't even message Mouth, who she dates and lives with and has dated for however long, and didn't care enough to contact him, and just kind of like the downhill slope of her character. That I feel like they could have done so much more with her becoming the model thing that they ended up doing. That didn't work for me. And they kind of tank the Mouth and Millie relationship at this point, anyways, with this stuff going on. And then the episode, like I said, ends with Dan flying Renee out to Los Angeles to his set, and talking to him like, hey, thanks for coming out. I have a proposition for you. Leads us to the next episode, which is 706 Deep Ocean Vast Sea. Originally aired October 19th, 2009, was directed by Janice Cook and written by Mike Daniels. Now, when I think of this episode, the biggest thing I think about is Dan trying to persuade Renee to come on scot-free and tell her side of the story. So he's pitching to her like what he wants to do, the fact that she's carrying his grandchild. Dan be my favorite character, and I mean understanding kind of his character and stuff. When you watch this, you know, at least if you're a fan of him, you know he's not really going to do this to Nathan. Like, they try to, like, make you think as an audience that he is, but he's obviously not. He's obviously got a plan. He's trying to get her on the show so he can do something to try to help Nathan. And Renee is cautious of that. And then Rachel ends up having to come and talk to her too by the end of the episode, and actually is the one that convinces her to be on the show in the next episode, because she says that Dan wants to bury Nathan because, you know, there's no like fixing their relationship. Nathan's never going to forgive him, so he wants to bury him. And also Renee throughout this episode too, Haley's still considering paying her throughout the whole episode, and Renee is waiting to see what decision she makes, because really Renee would rather take that money and be done with this and not have to go through with the show and all this. But since Haley doesn't do it, she takes their decision, if not for nothing else, because the show's going to pay her. So that happens, and that's the main thing I think about when I think about this episode. Also, Brooke is definitely, well, her and Julian, you know, the episode starts with them and she gets the idea for clothes for bros, which, by the way, I would love to have some clothes for bros. I think her designs would be awesome. Would love to have that. But she gets the idea from looking at Julian, but Julian has to go work on his script with Alex. So Brooke ends up having scenes with Chase in this episode and measuring him for the line and whatnot. But then throughout the episode, Brooke ends up finding out. First, they have this ridiculous thing that they keep bringing up, and to a degree, I understand what they're coming from, because Brooke's character says it too, which I don't. Obviously, you know, it's written from I don't know Mel's perspective and all this different stuff, but the fact that they keep hammering in of how Brooke was in high school, like it was such a bad thing. Like she did some bad things in season 1, but like how she was, like I don't like how that's supposed to be interpreted as bad. And I think that needed to be corrected. And they bring it up again in this episode of how Alex is how Brooke was in high school. That didn't work for me, and I wasn't a fan of that. But I know where they're going, but like I said, it doesn't work for me. But Chase mentions that to her too. Which I don't know how Chase doesn't really, dude, you were there for like 2 weeks in high school. Get out of here. But yeah, she finds out too that Alex got naked for Julian, and then she goes over there, confronts both of them, tells Julian that, you know, she'll see him at home, but she's definitely planning to sleep on the couch tonight, and she fired Alex, and Alex is like, well, I have a contract, and she's like, I'll pay you out, like, you're fired. Ciao, bitches, is what she said, which is great. Love that. And then Mouth has to make a decision too with the news station. He ends up quitting in this episode because he makes the decision, hey, I'm going to go on there, I'm going to do what you say. He does it. Locks the dude's door with the chair, his boss, and ends up going and telling the truth that, you know, this is all a rumor and they should turn the channel because they are not reporting on the real news here and sports, which is what, first of all, I don't understand either, like with Mal's situation, why are they not covering this? I know he's a sports player, but this isn't sports, this is a rumor, so like, why aren't you covering this on a different thing other than sports? But I don't watch local news and I don't watch sports, so maybe this is where it would actually land. And then also, Millie has, you know, scenes with Alex in this episode where she's like upset about her weight, and she starts taking diet pills because of that, which then I guess diet pills lead to cocaine in a couple episodes down from here. The main things about this episode for me, Dan persuading Renee and Brooke firing Alex. And then seeing where the Alex and Julian storyline go in the next few episodes. Because at this point, you know, obviously she does stay in the show, but she doesn't have that big of a reason to stay in Tree Hill. and I'll talk about that in future episodes too, because I'm not sure if McKenna's actually in this episode or not, based off, because it's been a little bit since I rewatched this one because we got ahead. But well, there's so many characters too that I'm like, would these people stay in Tree Hill? Like, I feel like they came from like New York or L.A., and I don't know why they're still here. Like McKenna was the model for Closer Bros. Like, I feel like she wouldn't have been living in Tree Hill, but yet she's in the rest of the future episodes. Like, she's living there. Same thing with Kylie, who's an actress on like the commercial. Not to say there aren't actresses living there. Of course they are, but I don't know. This makes me question some of those decisions. But that's my video for today. In the next video, we'll be talking about episode 707, I Am Loving You, which is one of my favorite episodes of the season. So don't forget to like this video, guys, and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys next time.